smoky whiskeys in general are gorgeous with oysters and smoked salmon and everything from the sea. And that's a natural flavor marriage that is just outstanding, where the whiskey's giving just as much to the food as the food is giving to the whiskey. But if you don't happen to have a lot of oysters sitting around at home, this is also lovely with just some pulled pork and barbecue sauce.
Sounds good too.
Keeping the snobbery out of it. Anything that's going to enhance these flavors is excellent. And that said, rich cheeses are lovely. I, of course, am partial to whiskey, but especially the Islay whiskey. So I think it's outstanding. But to be fair, cognacs, rums, gins, tequilas, lovely with cheese.
I have tasted some wonderful Bowmore single malts that were quite older and that I could have not purchased myself. But I remember white Bowmore being absolutely unbelievable. What's going on with those rare to find Bowmore?
Well, that's something that Bowmore does really well, is the rare bottles catered to our collectors. So the Bowmore White that you're discussing right now is actually part of our trilogy series that is now completely extinct. There's only a couple places in the United States, mostly stores, that have these bottles. The collection of the three bottles, Bowmore White, Bowmore Gold, and Bowmore Black, together, going to be about $25,000 to $30,000 for the consumer, which is more than my first salary at my first job. So the person that gets to take those home is absolutely my hero. I was lucky enough to get to try them at a dinner in New York, actually. I only got to try a sip of one of them when I was in Scotland at Bowmore. That's how rare it is. These bottles are very hard to find. And we did host a series of three, of course, trilogy dinners around the world, one of which was in New York. And that was the Bowmore fans and the keen enthusiasts from the United States came to this dinner, and we got to have a dram of each of them, perfectly paired with some foods by the chef Charlie Palmer. So beautiful. Excellent. Yeah, very, very good. These are some of the rarest barrels in existence from Bowmore. Each of them varying in age, but I can tell you it's, barrels that are roughly 40 to 50 years old, small production for these specific bottlings. And what's most important once you get into these really old bottlings is, yes, the flavor is going to be there and the flavor is going to be wonderful. But the first thing that you notice is not necessarily the flavor. It's the mouthfeel and the smoothness and the creaminess and the silkiness of this whiskey.
For those who know and like their technicalities, what can you say about, say, the way Bowmore is distilled differently than others? Why is it so different? Why is it so balanced then in the end? Of course, maturation, we just talked about it, has a lot to do with it, but then is it made differently?
Well, I think, my favorite thing and my biggest takeaway, and the image that I have in my head, truly, every time I get the aroma and take a sip of a Bowmore, the first thing I think about is the location of this distillery, and most importantly, one of our warehouses. So our distillery backs right up to the water. So if you've seen a picture of the distillery, you can see the white wall that says Bowmore in black right there on the side. That is actually the wall of one of our warehouses. That warehouse goes 3 stories below sea level. And we've got some of our best barrels aging in this particular warehouse that is just constantly being beaten with the waves, the Atlantic, and of course the weather. We all know what the weather in Scotland looks like, but most importantly, it's consistently like that. In America, where we're aging bourbon, we have nice weather, but we also still get some winters there in Kentucky. So you've got more of the extremes, which of course we know in the extremes, things expand and contract, cold and hot. In Scotland, it's consistently rainy, mild,
people inside
chilly,
the bars and restaurants.
keeping people warming up
at home.
with a nice, lovely glass. Yes. So this warehouse where we're aging some of our best barrels is constantly just being spanked by the sea, and that sea salt and the sea air absolutely finds its way into the little pores of the barrels. The barrels, of course, are porous. So, everyone's probably heard of the angel share. 2% of this liquid is evaporating out of these barrels every single year. So to keep the math simple, I know it's 2% of whatever 98%, 2% of that, 2% of that. But a 25-year-old Bowmore, by the time they open these barrels, they've got about half the liquid to work with. So what's coming into the barrels? Of course, there's going to be some oxygen getting in there from the surroundings. So that's where the lovely environment and other notes of Islay come into play. Islay is beautiful with every square inch. And it's incredible thinking how when Bowmore got started in 1779, that it's still there today. And Bowmore, the town of Bowmore, is considered like the capital of Islay. And it's really just a few square blocks. But there's so much to see and do right there. And like you were saying, your visit to the distillery, my visit was absolutely wonderful because, as is true in all of Scotland, but especially at Bowmore, the hospitality and the warm welcome that any visitor is going to get, you're going to walk away just feeling like family. The Bowmore 15-year-old compared to the Bowmore Tempest is a richness and a lightness. This is going to be seemingly much smoother in comparison to the Tempest based on the proof. So the proof is really going to speak for itself when you're doing a direct comparison of these two. But now you're going to see a definite difference in the aroma and the flavor profile, and that is specifically coming from first fill American oak and a very heavy influence of the sherry oak. It's amazing how the sherry is very present, yet it is not aggressive in any way. Sometimes sherry wood on the maturation can be a bit too strong, a bit too overpowering. Absolutely. Not in this case at all. Almost a dryness and a muskiness to the whiskey. So that's why I tend to lean more towards island whiskeys that have the sherry influence, because the complexity actually works very, very well together. Lovely. And immediately I'm taken right back to standing at the side of the distillery with the waves splashing my toes. You know that within the process at Bowmore, there's something special that goes on at the malting. Say a bit more about that. Yeah, so of nearly 100 distilleries in Scotland, there's only about a handful left that are doing their own floor maltings on site. So again, to be fair to all the distilleries out there, most of them are getting their malt from the same dozen sources, which is great and wonderful. But there are a handful of distilleries left that have the structure to do their own floor maltings, and they've been doing their own floor maltings since 1779. Now, naturally, the production has increased since 1779, and the overall volume has increased since 1779, and we've also gotten a lot more modern and know how to make our whiskey perfectly for how we want our whiskey to taste. So at this point, the maltings that we do on site account for about 20% of the malting that we need for our overall production. The interesting fact that I like is that it takes about 1 metric ton of barley to create 1 750 milliliter Let's have a thought for that ton of barley. Yes, so saying that we're able to do 20% of our own malting is exciting and great, and we will continue to do that for the tradition of it and the pride of doing that. But it's fun to watch. As a brand, it is. It's beautiful. It smells wonderful. And as the brand continues to grow and the whiskey continues to become more popular, hopefully we'll grow enough that 20%, we will need more barley, but we will always do some of our own floor maltings just for the tradition and the respect of it, because it is a wonderful thing to be able to do that on site. And there's so few left to do it. Labor intensive, though.